Good morning. How is everybody this morning? I feel like we just did this. Well, we got a bunch of people in the back. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I hope you had a great holiday weekend, enjoyed some time away. It's good to be with you and have everybody here for a professional development day. We haven't been able to do this in a while, and we heard from you that there was a tight turnaround from kickoff until classes started, and that you needed that time to prep and get ready and that kind of thing. And we had this day on the calendar with no curriculum classes, and excuse me, we also heard from you that we needed some professional development around safety and security, and that there really wasn't a great time for us to get everybody together. But these days that are kind of set aside for no curriculum classes are a good opportunity to do that. But thank you for being here and showing your commitment. There's no greater responsibility and priority that I think that we have, and that is to try to create safe environments for you to work and our students to learn. And we're excited about today. Look forward to some great sessions. Thank you to all of you who are leading sessions, and I'll explain that here in just a minute. Before we get in to the main business of today, there's a little bit of business that we needed to take care of at kickoff that we were not able to do. So I'd like to do that this morning, if that's okay. And that is to present the Dr. Donald W. Lackey Excellence in Teaching Award. And again, we weren't able to do that. The person that is receiving it, by the way, had a legitimate excuse why they couldn't be here at kickoff. So we're going to do that this morning. Just a little bit of background about the award. The Donald Lackey Excellence in Teaching Award honors a full-time curriculum faculty member who exemplifies personal dedication, concern for student welfare, and academic excellence. Established in 1988, the award honors the late Dr. Donald W. Lackey, who served as CCCNTI's second board chair from 1983 to 1987. The winner, selected by a committee appointed by the president, is presented with a $1,500 check from the foundation in recognition of their exceptional dedication and service to the institution. Now, before I tell you who it is, let me tell you just a couple of things that the nomination packet had about this individual. It said their number one goal is student success. This person provides an inviting atmosphere, loyal and honest in all interactions with students, CCCNTI employees, and community members. This person never says, "I can't do that." Instead, volunteers to assist in any way he can. I just gave part of it away. And willingly fulfills any requests without hesitation. It's hard to read this and not give it away. This person is a behind-the-scenes employee who deserves to be recognized. He is the epitome of an outstanding teacher who is always willing to try new things and encourage his students to stretch themselves to new heights. He does his job so well, and I think this is very true, that others don't realize the effort and dedication he gives to his students and the college. Not only is he an excellent instructor, but he is also kind, compassionate, and a colleague who is well respected by his peers. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating this year's Dr. Donald W. Lackey Excellence in Teaching Award winner, Mr. Tom Thielman.
That's right.
What a well-deserved honor for Mr. Thielman. And thank you, Tom, for all you do for this institution and for its students and its communities that we serve. He is a tremendous asset to this college, and students are lucky to have him. And we're lucky to have him leading our art department. So, back to the other business at hand. Again, thank you for being here. We are so lucky today. Before I get into introducing our guests, just a little bit about the agenda. You see that on the screen up there. There's also copies of the agenda just as you exit the auditorium. And kind of the way the day is going to work, we're going to hear from Director Schurmeyer here in just a few minutes, which, by the way, is a special treat for us. And then after he concludes, we'll take a break. The refreshments, I think, will still be in the lobby if you want to grab something to eat or drink before going to breakout sessions. And then we have 3 sessions going on this morning. The one in here will be on cybersecurity, led by Susan Wooten and Lisa Helton. And then upstairs in the bigger room, room 206, will be a session on self-care, led by Shannon Brown and Tuesday Sigmund. And then just down the hall past the culinary kitchen, catering kitchen, a session on campus safety led by Josh Brewster, who's our security director, and Donnie Basinger. So we'll do those breakout sessions. Choose one of those. All of these sessions will be recorded, so you won't be able to go to all of them, but you'll be able to get 2 of them today, and then we'll have the rest of them posted on Portal for your viewing pleasure at your convenience. We'll have lunch upstairs at around 11:45 or so, prepared by our own Chef Corey and his team. So we'll look forward to that. As soon as lunch is over, around 1 o'clock, we'll come back in here for a brief, about 30-minute presentation from the Pierce Group. And then we'll have another round of breakout sessions this afternoon at 1:45. Again, same locations for all of those as this morning, with one addition, and that is any of you who need bloodborne pathogens training, that will be back on the Caldwell campus in B104, the auditorium space there in B building. So, and then once that's finished, those 1:45 breakout sessions, once those are finished, we will adjourn for the day. Okay, so enjoy the day. Again, thank you to those of you who are going to present. We look forward to hearing from all of you. And again, there's nothing more important than we can do than try to provide safe environments for our workers and our students. So thank you for being here and for your attention to our safety and security efforts. And I am thrilled today that we have the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation Director, Mr. Bob Schurmeyer, with us today. Him and his wife are here. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give them a round of applause. Folks, they got up and left Charleston this morning before 4 o'clock to be here with us. So it is a treat for us, Director Schurmeyer, for you to be here, and thank you to your lovely wife for being with you. Let me just give you a little bit of information about his background, and then we'll turn the time over to him. But I had the pleasure of hearing him speak to the North Carolina Community College Presidents Association last summer, and I knew when I heard him speak that he would be somebody that you would want to hear from. And again, I think this is timely this morning that just a week or so ago we had the situation in Chapel Hill. And as somber as that is to think about, it's important for us to think about it, and it's a reality that we hope we never face on this campus. Or on any other campus in our state or in our country, but it's a reality that unfortunately tends to pop its head up every now and then that we need to pay attention to and we need to be prepared for. And many of you heard how close this can be to home this past weekend when just down the street from the campus proper of the Caldwell campus, the 95-acre piece, it's kind of in between there and Taps, at Reed Fabrication, I guess in that parking lot there was a shooting, an individual shooting at deputies. And so that's pretty close to campus. And that person had been at large and on the run for the past couple of days, but luckily law enforcement apprehended him this morning. Let's give our law enforcement community a round of applause. You know, what they do to keep us safe can never be underestimated or underappreciated. So we thank them very much. And we're fortunate, as you know, to contract with the town of Hudson to have 2 sworn officers on our campus in Caldwell, and then we contract with the Watauga County Sheriff's Department to have a sworn officer on the Watauga campus. So we appreciate what they do every single day to keep us safe. But this morning, Director Schurmeyer is going to talk to us and give you a little bit of information about the SBI and anything that he wants to share with us. He's always involved in these unfortunate situations across our state as the SBI gets involved. But Director Schurmeyer has been with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation since July of 2016, and in this capacity reports to the people of our great state of North Carolina. Director Schurmeyer was raised in Charlotte and later attended college at UNC Chapel Hill. After graduating with a bachelor's degree in political science, Director Schurmeyer joined the Charlotte Police Department as a patrol officer. That agency became the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department in 1993, and Director Schurmeyer spent 21 years in the upper command ranks of this agency, having served as Deputy Chief of Police for over 11 years and Interim Chief of Police for 6 months. He gained experience in all major areas of the department's operations, including uniform patrol, criminal investigations, and vice and narcotics. While at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, Director Schurmeyer was an active member of the North Carolina Police Executives Association and the North Carolina chapter of the FBI National Academy Associates. He served as president for a time for both associations, and he is a graduate of the Senior Management Institute for Police, the FBI National Academy, and the Secret Service Dignitary Protection School. And after a lengthy career with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, Director Schurmeyer co-founded USISS Agency, a security and investigative consulting business in Charlotte, and with others, Director Schurmeyer grew the business into a successful enterprise with offices in Huntersville, North Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, and Miami, Florida. Please join me in welcoming our State SBI Director, Director Bob Schurmeyer.
Thank you. I sure appreciate that. Is this mic working? Perfect. Well, thank you, Dr. Porch, and I'd like to congratulate you as the President of the Year for the Community College Association. 58 campuses, and your own Dr. Porch won that award, and well deserved, I might add. So I'm going to go through some slides here, but I think the value in this presentation is really the interaction if you've got questions or comments or concerns. And as Dr. Porch mentioned, I've had a fairly long career in law enforcement, and I've actually been to the campuses after they've gone through a traumatic situation where they've had an active shooter. In 2019, I flew down from Raleigh to Charlotte that evening, the evening after Tristan Terrell killed 2 students and injured 4. And I must confess that when I saw that campus, it was very surreal for me. I'd been on the UNCC campus many times through my career and living in Charlotte, but it was unlike anything I'd ever seen, and the campus was in total shock. And then last week, I drove over and was at Chapel Hill the afternoon after, or actually during, the active shooter over there. So I can tell you firsthand, it's not something that anyone would want to go through, obviously, but it's something that you got to prepare for and try and prevent. So let me go through some things. So Our agency, and I'm going to step over here if that's okay. Our agency was formed in 1937, and it's the mission is clear. We're the predominant criminal investigative agency for the state, and we investigate everything from terrorism to white-collar crime to murders and robberies, officer-involved shootings, and drug investigations. Our primary purpose is to provide assistance to local and state law enforcement agencies, and we also work with the federal agencies as well. The original areas of jurisdiction include narcotics, arson, public corruption, election law violations, misuse of state property, environmental crimes, human trafficking, child sexual abuse, and assaults and threats made against public officials. You'd think a statewide agency that has that many jurisdictions would be a fairly large agency, but truth be known, we're relatively small, 270 sworn agents across the state. We have 181 non-sworn personnel that help and support. We maintain a lot of the information systems for law enforcement around the state. We have eight district offices throughout the state. Here's a listing of the programs that we do. I could spend a lot of time on each of them. For example, cold cases. A couple of years ago, we got into forensic genetic genealogy, and we're solving cold cases on a regular basis now, some that are 30 and 40 years old. I can remember a 3-month-old who was left in a trash bin 30 years ago, and we solved it. We brought justice for that 3-month-old and made arrest in that case. Narcotics, not surprising to you all, we are experiencing the illegal drug trafficking like we've never seen. We're taking on the cartels in a big way, a very big way. We're third in the country right now in state wiretaps, wire intercepts, and we're very successful in that regard. We have an air wing, drones. You can see some of the other things. I draw your attention to the Behavioral Threat Assessment Unit. We call it BETA. It's a unique program. There's no other state in the country that started down this path like we did. And I'll give you a quick story on that. February 14th, 2018. Anyone remember what happened on that date, Valentine's Day 2018, that involves an education institution? Marjory Stoneman Douglas. Nicholas Cruz attacked that campus. Anyone remember how many people were killed? 17. 17 were critically and seriously injured. A total of 34 people shot that day. And what I'll tell you about that can relate to your campus, your campuses, is Nicholas Cruz, when he first, he was actually a student on that high school, or in that high school. And when he came on campus that day, he was not a student. He was not an active student. And some of the staff had been preparing for active shooters over the years, and one of the maintenance workers spotted Cruz on campus, and he was carrying a long bag. And as we later realized, he had 2 rifles in that bag with hundreds of rounds of ammunition. But the maintenance worker saw Cruz, and he had a radio, and he radioed in, "Hey, that crazy kid is back on our campus." So they knew that Cruz had certain issues that they should pay close attention to. The staff was well aware of it. And as we know, and as we've seen, and all of us have seen the horrible aftermath of that, Cruz was known to law enforcement. He was well known to the FBI, well known to the local sheriff's office, and people began to ask the right questions. Well, why didn't we do anything about him? Why was he allowed to do what he was able to do? And so in February of 2018, I went to a series of meetings around the state with chiefs and sheriffs. And they were talking about the normal things that you think cops would talk about: hardening the target, good guys on campus with guns, and things like that. And I thought, what can the SBI do? You know, we're generally an investigative agency. What could we do? So I went back to our executive staff and I said, look, you know, this is horrible. What happened this Valentine's Day? What can we do as an agency to prevent it? And we came up with a concept, and it's unique in the country, I would say, that we decided that we would try and get ahead of the active shooters. We try and identify these people, and then knock them off the path to violence. Because those of you in the psychology field understand that oftentimes people that are disturbed, that are prone to commit acts of mass violence, actually plan out, and they provide what psychologists call leakage. Leakage is where they begin to tip people off that they're having ideations of mass violence and going to kill people, or they have some kind of beef with somebody, or they feel aggrieved in some way. And so we came up with the concept similar to what anyone heard of the Behavioral Analysis Unit of the FBI, BAU? They do TV shows and stuff like that. And so we decided to strike out on our own and develop our own program. And we went up to BAU, and we talked and consulted with those agents and analysts. And then we went over to the Secret Service. The Secret Service has what they call PID, Protective Intelligence Division. It wouldn't surprise you that there are a lot of people that want to do harm to protectees of the Secret Service. So they have a whole unit dedicated to identifying and dealing with people that might commit acts of violence against their protectees. So we picked apart what they do, what each unit does, and we came back and developed our own way forward. We did this without any funding for that particular budget year, and no additional staff. But we felt so compelled, and we wanted to go so far to advance the cause of preventing active shooters and violence that we created this unit on our own. We now have funding, and we now have staff. We have a total of 8 sworn agents, a handful of intel analysts. We have 2 full-time psychologists and a 3rd part-time. We have a social worker, and we have an attorney that interacts. We call it a multidisciplinary team. Now, why would we have an attorney, would you ask? Well, part of it is to protect the privacy interests of the people that we're investigating, because oftentimes they've committed no crime. You know, planning to commit the act of mass violence in and of itself is not a crime. And we're geared mostly to go after bad guys and lock them up. But in this case, these people haven't committed a crime per se. So we identify them, and then we have our attorney protect their privacy interests and to ensure their constitutional rights are protected, because we don't want to unintentionally violate their constitutional rights. So we created this unit because of Marjory Stoneman Douglas. And about 6 months into our program, about 6 months into it, I got a call from my counterpart with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And he said, hey, I've heard you've got this program you're starting up. And I said, yes, Rick, actually, it's because of what happened in your state. We don't want it to happen in our state. And so he sent his agents to study with ours as we developed our training programs for our agents. And I would say as we advanced this program, and as we got funding and staff, we engaged the UNC system, the University of North Carolina system, and there are 18 campuses. And their police departments now have been trained with us, and they collaborate with us on a regular basis. And I would tell you, and if the question comes up, well, what about last week? Did you not identify him? I would tell you that Beta and what we do is imperfect. We don't have a perfect crystal ball where we can say, okay, this person's talked about it, and therefore we can get ahead of them and knock them off the pathway to violence. there are bolts of lightning out of the blue that just strike. And Tristan Terrell, the UNCC shooter, actually was a student at Central Piedmont Community College before he went to UNC Charlotte. So he actually matriculated from a community college to a university. And he was another one that was a bolt out of the blue. We did a post-mortem on that shooting to try and figure out, did we miss some warning signs, or what happened that we didn't see it. And the fact remains that he didn't commit, that we're aware of, leakage where we could identify things like social media and sources of information that you can see and figure out that they're committing certain, or preparing to commit certain crimes. I draw your attention to Isaac and the Fusion Center. That we'll talk about that in a minute, but we're the only fusion center in the state. We collect information. It's a multi-agency intel center, and we collect information from various sources throughout the state. The other programs and units that we have up there are pretty straightforward. Planning for threat management, you know, this makes sense to you, but I'll just draw your attention to it again. These are large, complex, public-facing institutions, and you face a variety of internal and external threats. You know, it's sometimes active shooters and even cyber crimes, they sometimes come from within, sometimes externally. They are a challenge for institutions to come to understand and prevent. And I would tell you that in the aftermath of an event like this, the public scrutiny that comes over the institution is pretty significant. So you really, to the extent possible, you want to try and plan to prevent these things. It's well worth the effort. This is Marjory Stoneman Douglas, the headlines there, and but the targeted violence that we see around our state, schools are number one. We have well north of 200 cases that we've worked, beta cases that we've worked, identified people that were having ideation of mass violence or targeted shootings and killings. And of those, well over 50% are educational institutions. So it wouldn't surprise you all that top on the list of people that would commit acts of mass violence would be educational institutions. Places of worship are next, workplace, public spaces, and law enforcement. Critical component of trying to prevent mass violence is developing your own internal capacity to scan and analyze what's going on out there. And this is not a simple, straightforward effort. You can't sit there and scan social media and be satisfied that you've identified somebody that may commit acts of mass violence. It's very complex. It takes a while to identify and then sort out what people are coming to think, and it requires interviewing a lot of people. And I would tell you that people that we've identified and worked active cases on oftentimes are younger people, and but we've had the youngest that we've interviewed and considered a potential suspect in these cases was 11 years old. And it was shocking to me when I came to understand what she was planning at 11 years old. The oldest was in his late 50s, and he actually, we were able to, he was ordering guns and ammunition and preparing, and we were able to intervene and get the sort of mental help that he needed. Key focal point in all of this is your is your Director of Security, who I know is here, and I hope to meet him. I know that you partner with Hudson Police Department and also Watauga Sheriff, and they're great organizations, and I know they help keep you safe. But these targeted mass violence cases are very complicated and oftentimes take a while to piece it together and then pull together the sort of people that can help. Well-trained and well-exercised. I know I talked with Dr. Porch about previous scenarios, and I think you're talking about planning some kind of activities in the future. I think training and preparing is sadly a necessary part of an educational institution. And I would say that I would offer, the SBI would be glad to partner with the community college system in the future if that were part of the solution. I talked about Beta. It's a multidisciplinary program. It involves sworn and non-sworn, and I would tell you those investigations, we collaborate in every case. There's not a single case that we do on our own. We collaborate with the local police departments and police agencies across our state. So as we identify someone that is on the pathway to violence, we engage the local police department, and it is actually their case. We help guide where we can and provide assistance accordingly. I would give you one illustration. We had a kid that, he was a high school kid, and he had ideations of mass violence, and our agents engaged the local agency, the local police department, and the high school was prepared to suspend him. And as we began to understand what this kid was going through, we said, we convinced the school system through the police department that if you suspend him, you're probably going to have more problems than if we can engage him and he remain monitored and in class. And they agreed to do that. And what happened in that case, and I thought it was a real success story, the family was cooperating. And in fact, every time we have a student, a younger student that's not an adult, in every case, we've had family members cooperate with us. Every case. We engage them, and they're willing to cooperate because most often, not surprisingly, these family members know that their child is going through something and they need help wherever they can get it. But in this particular case, the police agency assigned a canine officer to work with the kid. They developed a sort of rapport. And so that canine officer every week would stop by and he would check in with the parents. And while he was checking in with the parents, the kid would jump in the police car and play with the blue lights and siren and pet the canine and all. And so while the kid was distracted, the officer was talking with the parents to figure out, is he taking his meds? Is he having any more ideations, or what's going on? What can you tell me about this kid? And it worked out beautifully. And as best we can figure out, the kid had the ideations, got the help he needed, and is now on the pathway to greater success. So I talked about the multidisciplinary approach. Threats of violence ultimately are a community issue, often require collaboration across many entities within the community. Our team is, that's the organizational chart, the org chart, and as I mentioned, we've got the general counsel there. We have psychologists, we have intel analysts, and agents. The unit itself, the way we go through one of our cases is we identify the person of concern on the pathway to targeted violence. We investigate, we evaluate, and then we manage. If we go a full-blown Beta case, that's what it looks like. Identify, investigate, evaluate, and manage. And management can take years. It can be a long-term process. Well, one of the things that we did is we hired a research psychologist, and she's worked with the FBI, BAU, and with other psychologists in her field. She's, being a research psychologist, she's interested in identifying certain processes, and one of the things that she came up with is an evaluation tool, so that when we have someone that's referred to us, we can match it up against what we call NC Bio 25. And believe it or not, the FBI is actually studying how we have developed our assessment tool, because it's taken years for us to develop, and it's, so far we feel it's been very successful. And as a matter of fact, the Australian National Police are now using our assessment tool over in Australia. Some of the agencies that we work with around our state and on the national level. I mentioned we have NC Isaac. It's our fusion center. Oftentimes some of these referrals come in through NC Isaac, and the fusion center is basically just a collaboration of police agencies, state, local, federal jurisdictions that come together, and we assimilate and evaluate intelligence, and it can be everything from terrorism to, like I say, beta cases that we deal with. There are the partners that we have in the Fusion Center, quite a few of them, as you can tell. And again, the key points that I'd bring to your attention: threat management picture for large organizations is complex, and it is always evolving. Social media has been a great tool for many of us in your field, in our field, and beyond, but it's a great tool for people that are inclined to commit acts of mass violence, and unfortunately they use it to great effect. Should you realize a threat, your preparation and your response is going to be under the microscope. So getting ahead of that, being prepared, subtly preparing things goes a long way towards preempting this thing. I would suggest that we have, if you have a person that you have some concerns or questions about, you have some process, some facility, some group of people that will come to understand it, and then they can reach out to us. Usually a single point of contact is preferred. And then, like I say, as these beta cases evolve, we're assisting. If your campus security were to reach out to us, we would work it through them, and it would be their case. We would be working in support of what you would need from us. That's my contact information, and I'm glad to take questions and interact with you, but I would tell you that these cases, these beta cases that we call them, are incredibly complicated. And oftentimes we get inquiries from local agencies where some kid has had a single event where they get mad, they're upset over a grade or a course of study or something, and they spout off or they get upset about something, and then they say, well, maybe I'll just shoot up the place. Well, typically those one-offs like that are oftentimes they're just people spouting off. If it's an adult, sometimes they've had too much to drink or something like that. We're not interested in those. We like to drill down in and figure out, has this been sort of a pathway, a progression, if you will, of circumstances that bring them to the point where they conclude that they have a grievance and that they want to commit some act of violence. In Tristan Terrell's case, the UNCC shooter, in the aftermath, it was publicly reported that he was upset because of tuition increases. Do we really believe that? I'm not so sure, but the substance of the grievance sometimes doesn't matter. It's the planning and preparation that these shooters go through, this pathway to violence. And our psychologists would tell you there's actually 7 steps to the pathway to violence. It's very complex, but generally speaking, those shooters, the ones that commit acts of mass violence, they follow a consistent step, a pathway to the actual commission of the crime. But, we don't want a Nicholas Cruz to ever happen in our jurisdiction, where law enforcement was notified several times that he was a problem. The school system knew he was a problem. The FBI knew he was a problem. And yet he was able to legally buy a gun, walk on campus, and kill 17 and injure 17. We actually brought Sheriff Gualtieri. He's Pinellas County Sheriff. The governor down in Florida named him as the chairman of the study commission for Marjory Stoneman Douglas, and they studied the aftermath. And we brought him up for a 3-hour presentation. And he's an experienced sheriff. He's got a law degree, and he's been in office a long time. And he did a 3-hour presentation. At the end of it, I was emotionally exhausted. I mean, he actually played at the very end a 5-minute culmination of the various videos that the school had grabbed, because they had cameras, so they were able to record, but he was already committing the acts when the cameras were on. So you don't want to be there, and the SBI will stand with you to help plan and prepare, and be there if you think you've got someone that might be of interest that we could work together collaboratively on. But these in the 200 plus, we're probably approaching 300 cases that we work. It spans the entire spectrum that you would expect of males, females. Like I said, it was an 11-year-old girl. And people have grievances all over. It's the people that decide to take the pathway to violence that we're mostly interested in. So I'm happy to take questions or comments or concerns.
See if this one, yeah. So Director Schurmeyer wants this to be interactive. So please think of your questions. We have a mic down here. We'll hand that around. If folks have questions, please ask those. Thank you, sir, for the information so far. We do have a wonderful team here in terms of our counseling staff and what they do in bringing people across campus together to assess potential threats with Shannon. I guess we call it a behavior intervention team that we're working through. But great counseling group that can alert us to some concerns. But as folks are thinking about their question, Director, do you have any advice that you can give this group? These are faculty and staff who are in our classrooms and in their offices every single day. What advice do you have for them in terms of just awareness, protecting their area, anything that they can do individually to help identify or maybe help protect their areas in the institution?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'd say this, that you all know your campus far better than even responding police when they come onto your campus. And certainly far better than the agents that we have that might respond to a beta case like that. So we've got to rely on you and trust your instincts on this. If a student or someone is appearing to focus on a grievance, either real or perceived, and that's all they talk about, and it seems just overwhelming that they're focused on this and their behavior has changed, their actions have changed. I'd say trust your instincts and, let your staff know, let whoever you want to know that, hey, I've seen this sort of action. College, I'm familiar with UNC Chapel Hill, and through the years, they've actually had an active shooter that was actually a spouse of a staff member who had came on campus, and and committed a homicide. So, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's people that you know the best that are having issues, and but there's fascination with guns and serial killers, active shooters, this borderline unreasonable fascination with it that seems to take over their cognitive thinking. They're talking about it and thinking about it. And like I say, there's leakage that psychologists will look for, whether it's written, whether it's video, whether it's social media, whether it's just chatting with people. There's leakage that they look for that is consistent with people that are in the planning stages. And I would say that my experience with these active shooters is that they are not, for the most part, spontaneous. They think these out, they plan them to incredible degrees. So they just don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to do it. They think about it, they cogitate over it, they contemplate, and then they begin to plan. And oftentimes we've seen them pull a fire alarm before just to see how an institution reacts, whether it's a church or a school. They watch the patterns of things before they actually commit the crime.
What questions? We have a question. Where's Susan with the mic? Oh, we have.
Thank you very much. I have two. First of all, what indications or common traits, if you can share, do you see in persons of interest in circumstances like that? And as the director here, we have the additional complication of being wide open for public for events. So what things would you suggest in particular that we would look for?
So I'd begin with a sense of awareness that, if something doesn't match up, if somebody's feeling a way about things and you've noticed a significant change or even a gradual change where they seem fascinated with, some of the things that I've already mentioned. But in every case, there's always a grievance. And embedded in that grievance is a sense of they've been wronged and they're going to make it right and they're going to get even with people. So, people sometimes have, they feel a way about things. You get a cold hamburger, you feel a way about it. But with active shooters and people committed to mass violence, it's an overwhelming focus, a fixation, if you will, on, this, I've got a grievance here and I'm going to make it right. And with the leakage, I just go back to social media is a great resource. But again, I don't want you walking out of here saying that, everybody that says one little thing is now a suspect. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is if you see someone that has just an incredible fixation that it won't go away, that's what they talk about all the time, or they've had a significant personality change, and suddenly they're withdrawn, but you're picking up on things where they've got a grievance. And again, I would tell you in 200 to 300 beta cases, I can think of one, possibly two, where we made arrests. So when we take a beta case, we're not focusing on the traditional arrest. We're going to go out and make an arrest for committing threats. That's not it at all. We're trying to get them the help that they need to knock them off the pathway to violence. So I don't know, did I sort of answer that? Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi.
As someone very affected by the Parkland shootings, I grew up in Coral Springs with very close friends. Anybody who knows Parkland and Coral Springs is like living in Hudson and going to school in Lenoir.
Sure.
Their children were in Parkland at the time, and seeing their friends shot right in front of them in a pool of blood, and they were missed because the shootings went right through the drywall. But one of the biggest things that parents were saying that the kids knew about this child,
Right.
but yet they didn't really have an effective way to call or a hotline that they can call and say, hey, can someone investigate like you're talking about now, which is great, and I'm so happy to hear about this program being developed. But there was like no hotline, and they think, they call the police department, they call these agencies, but they're so busy with things that they can't really get to that. So I didn't know if we have a hotline maybe that's being developed or something in that manner rather than just calling our local agencies or anything like that.
Yeah, so we do have a tab and a phone number for Beta on our website. So if you go to it, it's a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up. So we will take referrals, but we are always 100% of the time going to work with the local agencies, sheriff, police department, whoever has jurisdiction over your campus. So, and you're right, the trauma that those children saw, and even the adults, was just horrendous. And so we're committed to doing whatever we can to prevent that from ever happening here. And law enforcement knew about it, the mental health providers knew about him, and the high school knew about him. So we're intent that if we misaccuse somebody else, we in law enforcement misaccuse, somebody else can refer to Beta, and we can figure out, try and connect the dots is what we call it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, so
Hi.
my question is kind of concerning because you said the 11-year-old. So I have an 11-year-old daughter who just started middle school. So what advice would you give to assure her that school is safe and not to walk into the buildings with fear, and so concentrated on fear that she's not getting, the education that she needs?
Yeah, that's a great point. And how old did you say she was? 11. Okay. It's sad because when I was growing up, my wife and I, when we were growing up, we did duck and cover. We thought it was a nuclear attack that was going to hit us. And now educational institutions from elementary on are doing active shooter drills, where they have active shooter drills. So we as a culture have changed quite a bit. So she's probably growing up handling it in some ways better than you are, because it's being ingrained in her every year, active shooter drills. But educational institutions succeed the best when it's very subtle, when students don't realize that you've done certain things to prepare for that possibility. So, I just assure her that, law enforcement is constantly evaluating ourselves, as we should, to figure out, okay, how do we prevent? We don't want to respond, we want to prevent. So the subtle things like hardening the targets and putting good guys on campus with guns are two ways that you can help prevent those things from ever happening. And then on the backside, reassuring that there are people out there that that you don't even know are out there that are working to try and identify people and get them the help. And again, I'd say this. I applaud our agents every day that we go out and arrest the bad guys. I applaud them, and we do a lot of that. We track down the worst of the worst. But in these cases, we truly want to work with psychologists and mental health providers to get them the help that they need. Other questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So do you recommend locking the classrooms when they're occupied with faculty and students?
The first part of that, what did you?
Locking the classrooms? You do recommend that?
Well, y'all are the educators. I would say this, that, and Dr. Porch and I were talking about this, when UNC Charlotte had Tristan Terrell in 2019, within a minute and a half of being alerted that they had an active shooter on campus, they had locked every door on every building. And in fact, the Kennedy building where he was shooting, the police were held up just a minute to try and get in their own locked building. So whether you lock them or not, when you have classes, when there's an active shooter, and I know Dr. Porch, you said you're looking at having the ability to remotely lock. I applaud that. I think that is a great reaction. But I don't know. I'd leave that to you all, whether you would lock those rooms or not. But definitely, when you have a suspect, an armed suspect, or any potential like that, having the ability to lock buildings is a great thing. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. I want to thank you for the work you're doing. So you talked a lot about people kind of in the inside knowing other people that can get the help they need. So is there any work going in the public schools and community colleges where you're getting this out to students that maybe they have a friend or a roommate so they know like what to look for or who to go to if they notice changes in their friends? Because it seems like that would be a really good population to work with if we had some like small groups where we talk to them and inform them of what to look for and who to talk to if they see some of this, so like you said, they can get the help they need before something happens.
So great question, and I would tell you that the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, so elementary through high school, they have a website up and running where people can report anonymously on changes in behavior and things like that. There's a fine line here. There's a razor's edge between reporting somebody or letting somebody know about something that another person would say, well, why are you doing that? Why, there's a fine balance, but I think on our website we actually have some traits, what to look for, and warning signs. But again, it's it's individualized. I mentioned before preoccupation with guns and weapons and preoccupation. One of the things that we've seen, a very common trait is that they'll do a lot of research on mass shootings, on people that have attacked schools and churches and things like that. But the warning signs, each individual that we've had and we've seen has an entirely different set of circumstances, and that wouldn't surprise you. But I think if you go on our website, we do have some typical warning signs of things, preoccupation. Right. And I would leave that to the institution, whether they want to go down that path or not. Some people would say, well, we don't want students ratting on each other and looking, I think that's handled, that decision typically is handled by the institution, whether you want to share the warning signs of that or not.
Any other questions?
Hey there.
Hi.
I was just wondering what our process is.
What?
Our process as an institution. This is probably more for Dr. Porch.
Oh.
So, Shannon, I don't know if you want to come to the mic, but you're talking about, Stacy, about how do we inform students, how do we report things, that kind of thing. I'm not sure if you're planning on covering that this afternoon or not. A couple of things I would say, and Shannon, please, if you want to come and say anything, get me off the hot seat. Okay, we got a mic. Dina did want me to remind everybody about Maxient, which is a tool that is available in Portal. It's also available in Moodle, where faculty and staff can go in and report information. That information directly makes its way to Dina and others at the institution that then can be evaluated. I know there's a lot of conversations happening with our BIT team, behavior intervention team, in terms of trying to head things off and identify people who may be a potential threat in some way to the institution. There is a razor's edge, a fine line of when things become a kind of a mental health issue that we need to address through counseling, and then it certainly bleeds over into student disciplinary issues at times that Dina and others have to deal with. There's a lot of different things going on. There's reporting mechanisms for Rose for things that we deal with around discrimination, or if people feel slighted in some way or threatened in some way. Our policies and procedures outlined where we have go-to people at the institution identified as resources. So, Stacey, it kind of depends. Also, I would say one thing that Shannon and his group do is a lot on the education front and trying to help educate students about different situations on campus, suicide prevention, et cetera, et cetera. Shannon? Anything?
I really didn't need to add anything to that. You did great. But since I have the mic now, we'll stand up. Right now it is primarily on an informal basis. As Dr. Port described, those kinds of cases where you have concerns typically end up in an informal report to one of our counseling staff. Hopefully you'll be comforted to know our counseling staff has already accrued over 160 hours of professional development since January. So all of our staff this summer have trained on the BITA violence rubric, assessment rubric. Tuesday Sigmund and myself are certified CIVRA violence risk assessment interviewers. So we are working on that currently, and we'll hopefully throughout the course of this upcoming year be launching a care team. As Dr. Porch mentioned, frequently called a BIT team, so we'll be calling ours a care team. So that is underway, and we do lots of proactive prevention. We have the Resilience Academy going. We have Talk Tuesdays. So we have a lot of proactive stuff. And the main thing is really just keeping the lines of communication open, making sure that people know who your counseling staff is and how to get in touch with them. So right now, it's informal. Our counseling staff do peer review every 2 weeks. We talk about difficult cases to make sure that we don't have blind spots or things that we're missing. And anytime there's a concern about campus safety, then that breaks the confidentiality protocol, and we do turn that over to Dina from a conduct standpoint, and it gets evaluated from a campus safety stance. But again, we are currently underway with the development of a more formalized care team.
The only other thing I would add to that, much of what happens in our lives is about relationships. And students have relationships with the people in front of them every single day. So you as faculty members, you as staff members have relationships with those students. So they may feel comfortable enough with you to share information that maybe gives you concern. And if that happens, please let somebody know. Please report it, even if it ends up being nothing. We would rather know about it ahead of time and be able to try to address it. Other questions?
So this is related to in the classroom, if we have a student who feels or seems to feel really off, how is it that we as peers would know? Say I've got a student really seeming wonky, their affect's really flat, they seem almost confrontational or combative, or they're troubled. And I mean, as a person who's got some PTSD myself, I know that when I feel that coming from a person, I want to get some help for that person. But if I refer, I call Shannon and say, hey, I've got a student who's a bit off. How is Melissa going to know? Or Gary going to know? How is someone going to know that for them to be on guard as well, or to be alert and looking for ways to, maybe it's what Stacey's asking, I'm not sure. What do we do so that I'm just not a lone wolf out there man, I got this student who's just really, really troubled. How does that not breach confidentiality, but how is it saving each other's lives at the same time? How do we do that? What's that look like?
Is that rhetorical? I'm not sure there's great answers to that issue. I think we have to talk to each other without breaching that confidentiality. We had a situation last year that I think that involved a faculty member who was concerned about a student, and then that kind of permeated throughout much of the institution and caused really panic and fear. So Shannon, maybe there's some professional development opportunities around that, about how do we help faculty and staff communicate that information with each other without creating, that panic and fear across certain areas of the institution. Because it's a reality that you face. I know that. You see these students every single day, and if they come in, our students deal with a lot. Every single student has a tremendous story and a lot of baggage in some cases that they're dealing with. So I think figuring that out, April, I don't know that we have the perfect answer for that, or the silver bullet, for lack of a better analogy at this point, to deal with that kind of a thing. But I think it's important for people to be able to talk without kind of creating that widespread panic and fear amongst folks. Because I think that's what happened for those of you who are familiar with that situation last year. And the other thing I would let you know too is a lot of work happens behind the scenes in these situations. There's, it's hard for us to be able to communicate out to the masses about what we're doing at the institution. But that doesn't mean that work's not happening with our counseling team. That doesn't mean that we're not referring. We have a referral program where we can refer students out for additional expert counseling if needed, and that kind of thing. There's a lot of work happening behind the scenes to try to keep you safe and to keep our students safe as well. But maybe that's an opportunity as we go forward to think about how we help faculty and staff understand what to do in those situations.
Dr. Porch, if I can add to that. In the past, you've completed a contact report. Maybe you've had a student in your office that you've had a conversation with, or might have had a behavior issue with, and you filled out this paper form and you put it in a file cabinet somewhere and nobody else knew that you were interacting with that student. If you will use Maxient for those type of situations, then we can start to put together those pieces that April's talking about, is that she's had a conversation with that student, Stacy's had a conversation with that student, Shannon's had a conversation with that student. Then we can begin to troubleshoot what's really going on. But if you continue to fill out those paper forms, we may never know. Okay? So take the time to fill out Maxient and send those reports in so that we can begin to formalize that BIT team a little bit more and start moving forward with structured conversations with those students and being cautious about the confidentiality aspects of it.
Other questions?
I'm a little bit concerned about when I fill out the forms. I think perhaps maybe this is more of a comment that, we need some training on what goes in a form like that and what doesn't, because I'm a little bit concerned about liability if the student were to see the file, or, is there a liability if we as instructors miss something, or if we flag something that we shouldn't have flagged? It's really hard to know. I think that's why I personally usually handle it with a conversation with one of the counselors and say, give me advice on what to do, on what to fill out, what to document, what not to document, because I don't know. And also, my other question is, as an instructor, sometimes it gets a little scary when students, particularly now, they seem to be more angry and there are guns everywhere. What do we do about the one that's targeting you, the one that goes off on you in class and has this, explosion? And, how is the best way to handle those kinds of situations? In my 20 years, I have had where I just had to tell class is over, because I felt like that was the safest thing for students. But what do we do about those kinds of situations where we feel like we might be targeted for violence? They go to the car, open the locked trunk, and then come back. What's our role in that? To make us feel safer or to tell us what to do?
Yeah, I think Deanna maybe has a comment about that, Deanna, but I would say if you have a situation like that in class, you need to let Deanna and security know immediately, because we have disciplinary actions that we can take, and we can take them kind of on the spot kind of a situation that hopefully, and if it's bad enough, we suspend and expel students. We don't like to do that, but if we have to, we will. Most of the time, I would say 95 or better % of the time, if we take some disciplinary action, putting a person on probation or something like that, or some kind of a warning, then that typically takes care of it. Deanna can expand on that. And the other piece to that I would say is we have security and sworn officers on campus for a reason. Their visibility, I think, is critical. We were talking about that earlier with Mr. Brown and Watauga. He's out and about and visible. Same with Hudson PD on our campus. The more visible they are, I think the more they deter potential situations. So having that high visibility is very, very important. But they're also there if for any reason that you feel threatened in any way. Please reach out to them. They can, stop by your classroom and be visible from that standpoint. We've had officers walk people out to their car if they felt threatened, but we certainly need to know about that from the administrative side too. Deanna?
And I'd say, Watauga folks, contact Ronnie first, okay? He's your first line. I can't be up there. He's my eyes and ears up there, so contact Ronnie first on that. As far as what to fill out in the form, it's basically the who, what, where, and why, the basics, okay? With as much description as you're comfortable giving. Because what that's gonna at least do is spark a conversation and some follow-up, okay? We will be doing some more training on Maxient here in the next couple of weeks. It's really, we've used it primarily for COVID reporting. That's not what the intent of it was. We're getting ready to move everything out of COVID world and into more of what it was designed for. So yes, more training coming. I would say from a liability standpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Porch, but the worst thing we could do is not report.
That's right. We would rather deal with it from the other way than to, have something bad happen on campus. Thanks, Vanna. Susan's getting her exercise in.
I've worked here quite a while, and the thing that I find the most is, hey, I'm well known for making students cry, and sometimes faculty, because I have a superpower, and that's to ask the right question at the wrong time. I'll say, so how's it going? And then a student will be crying, telling me exactly what the problem is. When I worked in TRIO, I would make them cry and take them to Becky, and she would make them feel better. Now when I make them cry, I call Shannon or text Shannon. I see students on a daily basis when they're not turning in work, when they're talking to me, when they're having that not so subtle explosion in class. I try to make sure that I'm me and personal and say, hey, how's it going? I'll give my ball players grief, sometimes about a game, sometimes about not turning stuff in. I'll talk to students. I completely floored a student the other day because he showed up for class after it was over with. And I said, so, hey, are you planning on passing this class or what? I know that student well enough because I've had him 2 times before. And I said, look, I'm worried about you having this habit and developing it now. And I think that personal interaction is something that's important for us, so that they don't see us as the institution, they see us as people that care. When I worked in TRIO, we had a couple of code words set up, so if you think you're having a problem, let us know this code word. I bring people in and I talk to them and I ask them, and sometimes I'm really an official, pardon me for saying, but an ass. But sometimes I'm also saying, well, look, let's forget all this other stuff and tell me what's really going on. And I think being personal is part of what the gentleman here is saying. It's like, look, if we can bring it to this level here, we can prevent the shooting. And I would much rather prevent this action than have to react to what happened afterward to this particular point. And I think since we're on a smaller scale that we can do that a little bit better. And then I've had no problem with reporting to Shannon or reporting to Dino or reporting to whoever else along this point saying, hey, look, I'm concerned about this person and this is why. And if there's a liability involved, please give me the liability. And if it helps one person, I'm good with the liability. So.
Good point, Robert. It's all about relationships, and that you're going to know before we know, for sure. Question right down here, Susan.
I just wanted to say that Heather and I in the PTA program did have a very questionable student a few years ago, and the first thing we did was talk to the student and then went to Shannon and got Shannon's input on it. It ended up to where we had to document a lot of things, keep all of your emails back and forth from that student. You're going to need those eventually. And the college had us do the buddy system where we couldn't walk anywhere on campus without at least another person. The Hudson Police Department came and circled our building at least once an hour looking for that person. And the college here really supports you if you have a student issue like that. But I would recommend you go to Shannon or the counseling center first, because they can meet with the student and sort of give an idea of their behavior. And if it warrants more police presence, if it warrants buddy system, whatever, the college really supported us through that and helped us feel safer, and we were able to keep our classroom safer.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey.
Is there any difference in reporting minors versus adults? Because we do have high school students here. We have other institutions involved, the early high school, High Brighton High School, parents. So that might be a question for Mr. Schumacher.
Yeah, so great question, and I'd say this, that no. If you, like I said, the youngest we had was an 11-year-old girl. So you report the information. Yeah, obviously you have your own system in-house to report it to, but and once it escalates to the police can get a hold of us, and we can take a look at it. But no, we've investigated numerous juveniles. In fact, many of them. So as far as we're concerned, if it escalates to us, we'll work it.
Yeah, it's very true, too, from an educational standpoint in terms of when they enroll with us, regardless of age, they're subject to the same regulations.
Dr. Porch, this is a question for you. A lot of these things are not necessarily that one huge blow up in the class. So they're things that we notice, and we think they're kind of like a medium kind of thing, like I don't want to wait a day to deal with it. I need to talk to somebody. And I teach on both campuses. But there's been times when I've been trying to get in contact with somebody, so it's not like an immediate threat or something. And it's at times hard to get a hold of somebody because they have other things to do. And everybody's talking about Shannon, which I love, the gentleman. I just feel like sometimes they might be overworked. Is there any plan to maybe expand a little bit with the counseling? Because
Shannon's loving you.
I love him. I cannot tell you how many times I've called him up for advice. And, we went to college, university, decided to teach. We weren't for all these other things, That's not my discipline. And so there's been times when I just have not been able to get a hold of somebody because there's not enough of them. And I'm not criticizing his department at all. I'm just saying they probably need a little bit more support. That's just my opinion.
There's just one comment, and then Bob will let you ask your question. There's no question that the institution values and appreciates our teams and what they're doing to keep us safe. We're always evaluating our staffing situation, so we'll continue to take a look at that. Shannon, maybe not to put all the burden on Shannon this morning, but maybe it would be good. We have new people in new roles at the institution. Maybe it would be good to send out something as kind of a resource for faculty and staff. Here's your counseling folks. Here's your go-to contacts, that kind of thing, so you have that readily available. But again, please report. Don't let things escalate. I can't tell you how many times Dina knows this. Those folks, Ronnie, those folks who deal with disciplinary type issues where things go unreported and then all of a sudden it's a major problem. Okay, so don't let it get to that point. If there's things that are concerning you as a faculty member that's certainly disrupting the classroom or causing you difficulty in your role as a faculty member, let our folks know with that. We can try to head that off and hopefully eliminate a bigger problem later. Tom.
I was going to say, on the subject of professional development, I wonder if we could do like a drill where, we're not just doing the drill in terms of that shooters on campus and pretending there. We could pretend that we have a student in the class that is going through that and just get practice with our own institutional processes in terms of just, we make up a student, Joe's student, and we go through that process of, okay, they're demonstrating this ability or this trait, and then we could walk through processes on our end. Because one thing I've noticed with a lot of the trainings in general is it could be like on a video series, and it's kind of desensitized to what it would look like in real life. So I think that would be a good idea. I don't know about what you guys think.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. And there'll be a survey too that goes out after today that'll kind of, Lauren, I think, pick up on today's event as well as employee kickoff. So if you have suggestions on future professional development opportunities, please let us know in that survey. Other questions? Here's the opportunity with the man here with us.
I know we have security numbers for after hours for the police or the switchboard, but do we have after hours, somebody on campus after hours from counseling services? Because we have quite a few after business hours, night classes.
Shannon, do you want to? Yeah, we have counseling staff on both campuses, right, till 7 o'clock in the evening. And is what you're saying, Amy, that we have classes that go beyond 7? And, Shannon, I don't know, like the QR codes that people can access services after hours. Shannon, you might as well come on up here.
Sorry. Yeah, so particularly on the Caldwell campus, we have somebody here until 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday from the counseling area. The Watauga campus coverage is not as great, but you could certainly call to the Caldwell campus if you're there after hours and get in touch with a counselor. So there's always a counselor here at least until 7 p.m. We have the QR code for the virtual lobby, but that doesn't give you the immediate response that you're interested in. But we do have somebody here until 7, Monday through Thursdays, one of our master's prepared counseling staff. Yeah.
Take a couple more if we got. I think we have time for a couple more questions.
What about improving security in the reception areas? What steps can we take for that?
I think I heard the question, Connie. Improving security in reception areas, is that? Again, I think you being aware of your surroundings, I think, is first and foremost, and if you see anything to alert people, Our visibility of our officers is really critical. We have camera systems on campus, that's being monitored. You don't realize it, but that's being monitored throughout the day and evening by our security teams. But I think just those things is really, really important. You'll hear this afternoon from Donnie and Josh about where we are with the door project and our ability to lock down campus and that kind of thing if we have a situation. So, if there are other suggestions about what we could do to strengthen that, we certainly welcome your input. We do have a safety committee, for those of you who may not know. Safety committee meets monthly. Dr. Holman, is that right? Yeah, so we have a safety committee that meets every month and talks about challenges on campus. We do drills for a reason. So we do our lockdown drills, our fire drills, other things that, just encourage you to take all of that very, very seriously when we do it. We try to identify if there are gaps in coverage or gaps in how we react. We have an intercom system that allows us to communicate, and we have various technology systems, through Regroup and other things that we're able to communicate with folks should there be a situation. I don't think we're in a situation where we can put armed security out, and we just don't have those types of resources where we can station armed security at every single entry point to the institution. But we need to be there for each other and be aware of what's going on around us. I think we have time for one more question, if there is one. Roy? Gotcha. I thought Roy changed his mind.
Well, it was, the question I have is on the TAPS campus for all of us that are over there. You mentioned the intercom, and we don't have intercom over there. And if there's a lockdown, if there's a drill, we have no clue what's happening till after the fact. If it wasn't for Dina texting with me last week, I wouldn't have known that we were to shut down and go home when the power was out on main campus. Can we do something about getting intercom over there so that we're aware of what's happening on main campus?
Susan may want to address how the phone system works and that kind of thing. First of all, if you are not signed up for Regroup, you need to be. That is the number one way we're going to communicate with you in the event of emergency. You have to select a campus, unless you want to get both campus alerts like I do. But you have to select a campus, so you need to go on there and select the Caldwell campus, for example, or the Watauga campus, so that you make sure that you're getting the right communication. Susan, in terms of the phone system and the announcements.
We do have the ability to make announcements through the phone system now. I don't think we did that last week during that event. And we do realize that there were some issues with the intercoms across all campuses, and those have been noted, and I know they're going to be discussing that in the safety committee.
We are scheduling a debrief meeting. For those of you who aren't aware, we lost power on the Caldwell campus last week for, 5 or 6 hours. And that's the second time in about 2 or 3 weeks that we've been without power for a significant amount of time. And so we're having a debrief meeting on that about communication strategies and making sure that that's effective. Just so that you know, you may think nothing's happening in the background, but trust me, there was a lot of work going on. And I was near Raleigh having lunch with a bunch of Duke Energy people, talking about our substation and trying to get that program launched when the power went out. And I looked at those guys, and they were just talking about the fail-safe programs for Duke Energy, and these things kick in after 8 seconds, and you get the energy or the power back on. And I'm getting all the phone calls and text messages, and I start looking across the table, and they're like, "What?" And I said, "Damn Duke Energy again." And here we go again. But what we try not to do is have a knee-jerk reaction to a situation like that and say, "Okay, everybody go home," and then 30 minutes later we got the power back on. We know how important your class time is, especially for those of you who teach, Lisa, in long contact hour classes and things of that nature. And we have a weird situation on campus. Director, I'm sorry, I'm getting into something that you probably don't care anything about.
You're good.
We have a weird situation like on the Caldwell campus. Every building is Duke Energy except for K building, and that's Blue Ridge Energy. So I told the Duke Energy people that we had one building on campus that was still running. And then if you go down to TAPS, Donnie, I think all that down there is on Blue Ridge Energy. So we had some buildings running and some buildings, without power and that kind of thing. We don't have a great way. Part of the debrief meeting is going to be to talk about how we deal with that particular situation in the future. We don't have a great way of shutting down part of campus. And if you're in this building, you stay and work, and you students stay in and go to class. But if you're in this building next door, you don't. So that's kind of a challenge just because of the way our grid is located, I guess, and how those different buildings are managed from the power companies. But just know that we're going to have conversations. Thank you, Roy, for telling us that. That's what we need to know. If there's gaps in communication, we want to make sure that we get that information to you and get it to you effectively and efficiently. All right, we are at break time. Let's show our appreciation to Director Schermeyer.
Could I say one final thing?
Yeah, please.
So thank you so much for inviting me. And Dr. Porch, thanks. Congrats on your award. But more importantly, this is an important gathering. And your leadership and your executive team, I congratulate you. And I would tell you that what we're dealing with is very imprecise and very difficult to pin down. I wish I could stand up here and list about 12 characteristics, and if you got these, then call us. But every case is different, and there are obvious things like Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and then there are other things like Tristan Terrell, and everything in between. So I would tell you this, that I stand here proud to represent all the people of the SBI that are committed across our state to protect you and to preempt, get ahead of these people if we identify them. And you've got your own infrastructure built in. So use it, connect the dots, and then have your law enforcement folks contact us if you think you got a real one. We'll help you sort it out and figure it out. But thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to my wife for being here, and Dr. Porch, thank you for...
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you, sir, for what you do and what your team does to protect us. We have a small token of appreciation for your trouble this morning and for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to take about a 10 or 15 minute break and then make your way to the breakout sessions. Again, the agendas are on the tables out as you exit if you need one of those. And we'll look forward to our breakout sessions at 10:45.
Good morning. It's me again. I'm out of breath, but thank you guys for joining us this morning. Luckily, you won't have to hear me for very long. I'm going to have just a few minutes at the end. But we are thrilled to have Lisa Helton with us here today. She is an information security officer with the community college system. And we are lucky enough to have her stationed on our campus so that if we need her, she's always close by. And she was nice enough to do a cybersecurity tabletop exercise for us this past summer. Some of you got to participate in that. And the response was so good that we asked her if she would come back and do an abbreviated version of it for professional development. So I'm thrilled to have her, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
Look at all you people on the back wall. Hey. You know what? I used to sit up there many years ago. I did. So for those of you that do not know me, I affectionately call Caldwell my home. And the reason for that is I worked here for 20 plus years. The majority of it was in IT. And then I moved on a few years ago, and now I'm at the system office. But hello to the background people. Okay, so today, it's like I was telling one of you, I think it was Allison. I was telling Allison, I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to wing it. So hopefully it won't be too boring for you. What I hope that we can get out of this today is just making you aware of cybersecurity issues through all of the college systems, and making you aware of proactive measures and what your roles are and how you can help the college stay safe. So I'll actually go through the agenda here, but I've got like 2 videos from 2 additional colleges that actually suffered ransomware attacks. So you get some firsthand knowledge of how it actually affects a college system. So we'll get started. So your agenda, basically you can see I'm going to go over the community college systems. I'm actually going to talk about a few of the ransomware attacks that have happened to community colleges. I'm going to talk about some of the dark web credentials that we've actually seen here for Caldwell. The impacts, how it's actually impacted, cybersecurity's impacted colleges in general. And then I'm going to walk you through a ransomware tabletop exercise. We actually slimmed this down to be able to fit it in this presentation, so we'll probably hit that pretty fast and furious. And then proactive measures, lessons learned, and then after that, I believe Susan's got a few slides that she wants to present as well. So this one I love. Who does not love the International Man of Mystery? The Dos Equis guy. Woo! So cybersecurity should be a top priority. As you can see, he says, I don't always think about cybersecurity, but when I do, it's usually too late. And the sad part about that is completely true. It's normally too late. This slide, unfortunately, when I was putting this together, spans over 3. And you really don't think about how cybersecurity and ransomware issues affect colleges until you see it in a timeline method. These red events, which may look orange, are actual events. That is where systems were compromised, data was exfiltrated, and colleges were down for a time frame. The first one started in July of 2019. Richmond Community College came in one day. Portions of their network was down, and their systems were encrypted. And it actually affected colleague. They were the first college that was actually moved into a cloud environment, and the system office helped them go through that process. Richmond, to this day, if you speak to their CIO, he will tell you they are not 100%. They are still recovering from 2019. They are still having issues. Not as bad as it was in the very beginning, but they're still having issues. They were closed for a period of weeks. The second one, August of 2020, was Piedmont Community College. They were migrated over to AWS, same as Richmond. They came in. Piedmont did not have portions of their network down when they came in. I think their website may have been defaced, but they definitely had some issues, so they were migrated. September of 2022, Guilford Tech, September 13th. Now that's not even a month, 2 community colleges were affected. February of 2021, Central Piedmont. They were able to recover on premise, which was really good. But all of these colleges will tell you, and you'll listen to them here in a little bit, they will tell you that they're still in recovery mode. I don't think you ever 100% fully recover from a ransomware attack. Additional stuff that's just mentioned on here is stuff that we've seen at the system office. We've dealt with some fake job emails that have went around, compromised student information, college websites being defaced. One thing I guess I should mention, the colleges that had the ransomware attacks actually had the National Guard deployed on site to help them get their systems back up and online. So that's the first slide. Here's the additional slide. We had 3 colleges impacted in April of 2022. Rockingham was one, and unfortunately I don't have her video on here, but Gretchen Parrish, who works at Rockingham, will tell you that was not one of her finest days when she came in and realized they were encrypted. And they really had a robust system, but it just goes to show it doesn't matter how robust you are. It doesn't matter if you're a small college or a big college. When a hacker decides to attempt to break in, doesn't matter who you are, they'll get in. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And of course, I've got some additional stuff on there. How many of you know about Gaston Community College? The original presentation I did over the summer, that slide was left blank intentionally because at that point we were not allowed to speak about Gaston. I can tell you I was deployed on site during the Gaston event. It's surreal to watch the CIO, the president, the business office, all of them come together and realize that they have actually been attacked. They're a smaller school. Nobody thinks about the small schools. They actually came in, had encryption on 10 of their servers, and they were lucky enough that they were actually able to continue classes even if with paper and pen. Moodle was still up. They were actually able to still log in for that, so that was a plus for them. But they are still in recovery. Unfortunately, they had some file servers that were exfiltrated with student information, employee information. And I'm sure they'll continue to see repercussions from that probably throughout the next year. And of course, this is the last slide. So since 2019, 15 colleges have been involved in 8 impactful events. Impactful events include compromised services and systems that cause a loss of college resources to users. So maybe Moodle was down, maybe Colleague was down, maybe Informer was down, maybe their website was defaced. But the point is they were not able to provide services to their employees or students during that time frame. 6 of these events included ransomware. Can you imagine how much money that costs the college, their cybersecurity insurance, not to mention the employees and students that were affected? So why are we a target? The amount and the type of sensitive information that we store and share, social security numbers, student aid, financial transactions. You don't think about that, but when a student pays online through self-service, it's a financial transaction. How do they get information about their financial aid? Through self-service. A lot of people don't realize that, and they don't think about it during the time frame, but those are very impactful. And of course, money. Why does anyone do anything they do? For money. One .edu account with password sells for $10 on the dark web. How many of you know what the dark web is? Or you think you do? Okay. So simply put, the dark web is just an intranet for hackers. You normally will not find it if you do a Google search for it. It's highly infiltratable. I can't say that word, so I apologize. But $10 on the dark web. Think about how much money they can make with that. So let's talk about the dark web. So over 41,000 credentials belonging to faculty, staff, and students have been identified this year alone. And the year's not over. That have been listed for sale on the dark web. Why do you think that's the case? Because a lot of people reuse their employee email addresses when they sign up for stuff. They also reuse passwords. Now, I'm sure you guys haven't done that, right? How many of you have a list under your keyboard of all your passwords? Don't raise your hand. So Caldwell has had 708 credentials posted. That includes employee and student accounts. All 58 colleges plus the system office have credentials posted. So 708, how many of you are wondering if it's you? Those are things you need to think about when you sign up for stuff. In addition to that, please don't use the same password over and over. Please don't use the numbers in front and then switch them to the back. Change it completely. So risk of compromised accounts. They're much easier to exploit once they have your account. That will allow them to additional vulnerabilities. Once they get in, it's hard to get them out. Impacts of compromised accounts can vary, but phishing, how many of you have ever received a phishing email? Everybody in this room should raise their hand. Everyone receives some type of phishing email, whether it be through your personal or your regular .edu email account. Data disclosure. Think about all the data your username and password can access. Moodle, colleague, self-service, informer, email, everything. And ransomware. One college ransomware attack started with 2 compromised students' accounts. It's that simple. Clicking on one phishing email can exfiltrate a virus that just runs in the background through a process. It gives them a door in. And you don't realize how simple clicking on one email can impact your day. So what is ransomware? Simple terms, it's a bad actor trying to gain access to the network. They're going to go in, they're going to exfiltrate your data, and they're going to sell it to the highest bidder. How many of you know that community colleges cannot pay ransomware hackers or attackers? That is true. Colleges are not allowed to pay the ransom. So what's happened in the past, you don't pay the ransom, they leak all of your information on the dark web. And then additional attackers get a hold of that and try to exfiltrate again. So it's just an ongoing cycle. So how does ransomware impact a college? Every event is different, and that's completely true. It depends on what's happening once you're on site. It depends on how many systems are impacted. It depends on how many users are impacted. Some events, colleges were able to come back from due to backups. Some events, it was completely greenfield, which means they rebuilt everything from scratch. When the National Guard and the strike team come on your campus, when I say it's surreal, it's very surreal. It's like having the Army just come in and unpack and bring in all these cute little briefcases and all these nice little network pieces of equipment. And then they start like plugging in and going all over all your systems, your user accounts, everything. Once they go through the forensic, if they cannot determine point of entry, they will push for a greenfield, which means all servers are rebuilt, all desktops, all laptops, rebuilt from scratch, no backups. Think about how many of you are sitting in here. How many of you have a desktop or a laptop? How many servers the college has? That's a lot of information, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of lost resources. But it can happen. Recovery can take weeks, months, it can even take years. And as I stated earlier, if you talk to Lee from Richmond, he will tell you they're still in recovery. No one that's ever suffered an event says, hey, we're 100% now, because they're not. There's always an issue somewhere. Oh, wrong slide, wrong button. So, open discussion. How would you describe your current cybersecurity resilience posture? How many of you think you're secure? How many of you think your personal information is secure? I'm glad nobody raised their hands, because it's not. As I stated earlier, this is a college that was impacted. This is Central Piedmont Community College, and this is Dr. Candy Diedelmeyer. She's actually going to explain to you, well, she'll go over how they recovered from a ransomware event and how they felt during the entire process. So let's hear from her. Oh. It's not working, Susan. No, I have to open it up in the browser. Did it open? Mm-mm.
Had to open it back.
Sorry about that. I should have.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, and I find it unfortunate that I've become a little bit of an expert in this area. So our cyber event really did impact the campus of Central Piedmont in so many ways. First, to know that it's happened to you and that in some ways you've become a victim of something that you're not in control of has a personal feeling to many people. It certainly has impacted, it does impact your processes, it impacts your business, your willingness and ability to serve your customers, but there's an emotional part of it, especially for what happened at our campus. You know, loss of work, and for some faculty, 30 years worth of teaching and learning and a knowledge base of a repertoire of work, as you might say, kind of like their life work, and you can't get that back. And so it has a number of things, I think, in terms of how it has impacted the campus. So from a business continuity standpoint, the readiness of that, and it does try whether or not you are prepared to come back. And then just the impact on your ability to serve your customers. And for a community college, that is really the common denominator of everything we do. We're in that service orientation business. And to know that for a period of time, there's a dead stop to that really makes you assess first how important it is and how important you are to your community when you're not able to deliver. And then secondarily, just there's all of us come at this work because we are very service oriented, and not being able to deliver that for a period of time until you find your bearings and kind of get things reboosted and re-going is a tremendous feeling, one that I hope we never have to recreate or experience again.
And you kind of talked about being ready. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently to prepare for the inevitable?
Yeah, well, I don't believe in time travel, and I don't believe looking back over your shoulder. And so I want to, if I can, I'll take this and think about it as a go forward, right? I'm really much more of a windshield kind of leader. So I would break it down into a couple things. So I made a couple. One is risk assessment. I think even as Central Piedmont, we've done some risk assessments over the years, making sure you're doing risk assessments and understanding the risks and vulnerabilities of your colleges, both your systems, your networks, even your processes, and those crucial assets that you have. I think it's important to have a clear understanding of what your most valuable assets are, and what the possible impact of any type of breach, small or large, could have on those assets. I think about employee training. We've deployed phishing training. We've deployed now cybersecurity, even training, even in a more robust fashion. But just really being diligent in ensuring that all of your employees are aware of cybersecurity. What are those best practices? Understanding the potential risks. And look, we all have to engage in so much training. And sometimes to ask faculty and staff, professional staff, to engage in one more level can be frustrating sometimes. It's a lot. But I think as a go forward and looking in the windshield, this is one piece of a training that I think people have embraced, and continuing to test our systems through that training. How we're doing, what level of readiness do we have in a go forward fashion, especially around what are potential threats, not just from phishing, but any suspicious activity, and looking at security of our systems. Again, that brand awareness, that service orientation of who we are to our customers and to our community, and thinking about it from a security lens in a very different way. we oftentimes require our, from a security standpoint, our physical security on campus to think about that and protecting physical assets and people. But then we think ITS is going to take care of that from a security standpoint of all of our systems. Until you've lived through an event like this, and you really do have to make sure that it's incumbent upon all of us to kind of have a different way of thinking, a different way of behaving, and a different way of interacting with technology in order for us to remain viable. And not just survive, but thrive, and to really remain viable. The next thing I would say is make sure your incident response plan, that it's comprehensive, that it's established, that it's clear, that you have multiple entities on campus that understand what that incident response plan looks like. And that plan should have protocols for reporting and analyzing any event or potential breach, as well as who has roles and responsibilities. I'd say some lessons learned about whose role and responsibility is it to make some calls as you walk through an event like that. And then for the next time, or even if it's an event where you're looking at a potential breach, whose responsibility is it? Who do you report that to, and who gets to make some critical decisions in terms of how do you move the institution forward through that process? And I'll maybe land on this one. I'm sure I know you have some other questions, but certainly making sure your technology and your infrastructure remain up to date. I know oftentimes that costs a lot. You are going to pay for it one way or the other. We are going to have to either find out how to make investments in technology and in our infrastructure on an ongoing basis, whether it's cybersecurity, that technology infrastructure, your systems. You're either going to do that the way you try to detect things. You're either going to pay for those things and make for those investments in the windshield, continuing with that analogy, or if and when something happens to your institution, I promise you the investments that you will make post-incident will be extreme. They are extraordinary. And then you're also dealing with increases in cybersecurity insurance as well as other things. So those are really important. And then I would just say, don't ever forget continuous improvement. This is not going to ever be over in a global digital environment that's changing every single day. So cyber security threats are constant, they're evolving. There's always something new coming at us for us to try to deflect or not experience. And so those threats and risks are out there, and making sure your ITS team, your faculty and your staff, and really your system set ongoing continuous improvement. This is an area where you cannot become complacent. And so that would be my message in terms of not if I could go back in time, but as I think about lessons learned and thinking about the windshield of where we're headed, those are the things that I would encourage colleges and your leaders to think about.
And then you kind of went directly into our final question, which is what advice would you offer to our academic leaders as they prepare for such an event?
Well, so one of the things I think our academic leaders, and I will hone in for just a minute on really faculty and the teaching and learning process. I believe that is our deliverable, right? That's the thing that our consumers want to consume. That's our business platform. And our ability to make sure that regardless of any event, whether it's COVID or we're talking today about a cyber event or something that impacts our systems, we have to make sure that we're ready to continue to deliver on mission for our consumers, regardless of our business platform and across all of those. And so I would just encourage our academic leaders to think about preparedness in a different way. Where are your repositories of your knowledge base, both where they sit internally, perhaps they need to sit externally as well, and thinking about it from a business strategy standpoint. Sometimes in higher ed, we're not comfortable with that. But what if you cannot deliver to market? There's a lot of competition out there. And we've now, at this college, at Central Piedmont, we've experienced that twice, and really thinking through that in very real ways to make sure that we're delivering on mission and that our consumers can actually engage in the business platform that we offer to so many, tens of thousands, is really imperative. And spending time thinking about that, not just from a process orientation, but a deliverable as well as the high value of what we do and how to care for that in very meaningful ways. How does that course platform look? Where does it sit? Where are the materials that you need to deliver? How have you partnered? Where are the repositories? What are your policies? And what are your policies when you can't meet or you have to meet differently? We've addressed some of those because of, again, COVID, or we've had a cyber event. But just making sure you've looked at those things from that academic dashboard, from mission essence of what you need to deliver into the marketplace, I think is really critical. Again, using that not to just survive coming out of any event, but how do you thrive and continue to innovate and meet the mission and meet what your customers need. I think it's really crucial. Yeah, the last thing I would say, and I know many colleges do this, sometimes we don't do it as regularly as we'd like to, and that would be make sure that you have somebody that's independent to come in and take a real close look and do an audit regularly of your systems. To not only think about, is your college meeting what might be a compliance requirement or an industry best practice, but really the effectiveness of what you've built. And is it up to date, and is it aligned with what your college's risk management goals are, for sure. But sometimes we always need another entity to come in and look over our shoulder and say, is this the best you can do? Here are your risks. Here are the maybe even holes in your environment, things we don't see. When you're really close to something, sometimes we don't look at it with that same critical lens. I've heard some of my colleagues say they do that on a regular basis. It is an investment. And oftentimes folks say, we just can't afford to do that, or we are not. This is an investment. You have to find a way to do it, and then pay attention to the results and execute on some of those results so that you can get ahead of what may come and that your college is well taken care of. So I do think that independent audit and critical assessment of your systems and your practices and your policies and whether or not you're living those out is really, really critical for institutions to think about.
Okay, so let's walk through a tabletop exercise. Let's walk through an actual ransomware event. Oh, I promise I'll get it right before we're done. So let me give you a little background. This is September 16th. You're in your fall semester. Classes have already started. 8:20 a.m. Your information security officer, which in this case will be Susan Wooten, receives a bulletin warning about CryptoLocker. It's a form of malware associated with ransomware infections. The malware restricts access to infected computer files and allows the perpetrator to demand that the victim provide a payment in order to decrypt and recover their files. The malware also has the ability to find and encrypt files located within shared network drives, USB drives, external hard drives, network file shares, and even some cloud storage drives. It can infect multiple computers on the same network and may spread through fake email attachments or bogus links. At 10 o'clock, September 25th, a faculty member at your institution receives an email from what appears to be a counterpart at Appalachian State University. The email suggests following a link to review a hiring announcement about the new academic dean at the university. The employee clicks on the link in the email and is directed to a non-Appalachian State University website. First mistake. Less than an hour later, your IT department begins to receive inquiries from employees about several cosmetic changes to your main website. The commenters note that a popular link now directs people to an unrelated website. How many of you out there have actually clicked on a link? I like how nobody's raising their hands. I have. I'll be the first to admit it. But you know what I did? I let IT know. And the reason I let IT know is, number one, you save face and say, hey, I'm sorry, I clicked on this, never should have, but I did, and I want you to be aware. Because you need to inform IT. The quicker you inform IT, the quicker they can go through the response mechanism to determine how far that malice actor may have gotten into the network. So your due diligence to say, hey, I screwed up, they will greatly appreciate. They're not going to be upset. They just need to be made aware. Let's see. By 1:30 p.m. the same day, the IT department receives a phone call from the business office that Informer is not accessible. Additional calls to the IT department describe difficulties accessing files. An initial investigation points to a phishing email sent around 9:59 a.m. That phishing email, that one that was clicked on, sets this entire chain of events. So basically, email was clicked on, computer virus has established a foothold within the college servers, and it appears to have spread throughout the network, hitting shared drives in campus departments. Access to the network and shared drives is restricted at 1:57 p.m. and are available in read-only mode. Multiple employees report that their computers have locked and display a message referencing CryptoLocker and demanding a payment of 5 Bitcoin to decrypt their files. Many of the encrypted files include the instructional materials of faculty and essential files for the business office. By 2:15 p.m. the same day, IT staff discover that several essential servers have also been encrypted. Moodle, hosted on-site, self-service, Aviso, Informer, file shares, and shared drives. So in this scenario, what is your role and what are your immediate concerns and priorities? What are you thinking? Are you thinking about your students? Are you thinking about, oh God, I hope I backed up my files? Are you thinking about, when was the last time I backed up my files? Are you thinking about classes being affected? Can you still continue to teach? Does this affect your life safety system? If one of the servers was fire alarm system, would you still be able to hold classes? See, these are things that I realize this is not just a strictly IT group, but a member from faculty can think about how they're going to continue with their classes if Moodle's not available. They can also determine how they're going to communicate with their students. The business office can go through the process and figure out how they're going to pay accounts receivable or accept payments during this time frame. Each one of you have a role during this process that you can help the college with. It's not strictly an IT function. What next steps or actions should occur in response to this scenario? Does your college have an incident response plan? And do you know who is responsible for executing that plan? If you don't know, she's sitting right here, Susan Wooten. Throw up that hand, Susan. Let everybody know. How will you communicate the incident to faculty, staff, and students? Moodle's down. How are you going to let them know? Regroup? Something else? Social media? These are things you need to think about. Who talks to your press? Does anybody know? Amy knows. Amy talks to the press. That has actually happened. Press gets wind of a ransomware event. Students have posted it on social media, and the press does show up on site. And they're happy to hold out a microphone to anybody that will talk to them. So please be aware, Amy's the person responsible. What areas and services are affected? Can you continue to serve your students? If Moodle were down, could you still work? If colleague, not that that's affected here, but if colleague were down, what would you do? What about Informer? How many of you use Informer? How many of you have backed up the stuff that you use Informer for? Like you get an Informer report, or you set up an Informer schedule. Do you guys have those backups? It's not on IT to do that. Those are things to think about. In addition to that, Moodle, your classes. It's not on distance learning. I know they do it, but you need to think about your courses and things that you've posted and assignments you've given and your syllabuses and documentation. As faculty members, you should be able to pack up your own information because it's your information. This is the last video. This is actually Dr. Heather Hill, and she's from Central Piedmont Community College, and she'll speak about the ransomware event and how it affected their faculty.
Hello, I am Heather Hill. I serve as the Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Central Piedmont. So in looking at what happened with our students, so students who were a couple of weeks into the semester lost everything up to that point. That included grades, submissions, all of the content. So they were struggling. We addressed that very quickly and assured students. We said that they would not be penalized for anything that was lost. We would work with them to catch up, but we still wanted to finish our semester. So as we were able to stand back up a different LMS, we began using Brightspace and tried to transition some content as much as we could from other sources into that LMS. Students were still forced to sort of start over. But in addition to the student loss, what they lost that semester, you know, I can't undersell what our faculty lost, because much of the work that our faculty put into their courses was housed solely in the LMS. There was not a backup copy somewhere else. Now, our situation may be unique, but part of our recovery process was to wipe desktops. So anything that was housed locally on a computer on campus was also lost to our faculty and staff. So the loss was horrible for our students. It was also horrible in many cases for our faculty. And in addition, I can't forget about staff in the instruction area and outside, but even our academic affairs staff lost workflow processes and forms and creation and, you know, just access to a lot of the things that hold us together instructionally. So not only losing our LMS for the current, but as you can imagine, losing, you know, semesters past, courses that were not actively being taught that semester. The loss was tremendous in terms of instruction for students, for faculty, and for staff. In addition, around instruction, we temporarily lost communication. So one avenue that was affected for us was with our email stream. So there was a short period of time where we were not able to communicate effectively in the early stages. And that was tremendous for us because, as you can imagine, many of our backup plans talked about, okay, what our lines of communication would be, who would contact whom. And that was difficult for us because at the time, you know, we had lost communication. So it's important that as we think about what you might lose, it's important that it's not just this is one plan, that everything will go in this one location, because what if that's not a possibility for you? So we also did not anticipate the overwhelming effect that the emotion would have on absolutely everything. I mean, we were devastated, we were disappointed, we were scared, we were grieving. All of the emotions came into play. Quite honestly, I was angry. I was mad at whomever was doing this to us, and I don't want to undersell the importance of making sure that you are prepared to handle all of the emotion that comes along with it. As with any disaster or emergency, you know, your first response is to recover. And I think we did as best we could. I think we did a good job with that. But I think the emotional piece of it, the emotional baggage, you know, just the grief associated with that in some ways is still lingering, that the desire to be heard and acknowledged and to be able to grieve together as a group for the things that we lost was very important. And not just for employees. Sometimes we think about our students as transient because in a 2-year environment, students aren't with us for long periods of time. Most of our students are here a couple of years and then they're gone. But for the students who were here, college is their safe place in their community, and they had lost something. So even if we think about it as being a semester's worth of work or a partial semester worth of work, they still feel that loss very genuinely. So the emotion that was tied to the event, we don't want to undersell. We want to make sure that when we think about how to recover, how to move forward, that we are still not in such a hurry to try to get things back, that we don't take time to acknowledge sort of that emotional piece of it. So in instruction, LMS was a big hit. Anything that was housed locally on devices, I think, was a big hit for us, because many of us do collect our things digitally, and there's not always a backup copy on paper somewhere. There's not always a paper grade book somewhere. So I think the loss to instruction was, yes, LMS content. Yes, there was some things on our desktops. But a loss that's a little harder for me to quantify, I think, is that that sense of security that's lost. I hope you've never had your car broken into or your home broken into, but whenever something is breached, you lose a little bit of that sense of security. So as a college, when someone breached our security measures, we have a little bit of that angst. So our security is threatened in some ways. So that was a little harder for us to address, I think, because we all acknowledged it and we all felt it. But I will say that our ITS team is phenomenal. The one then, how it's evolved now, I do think we're in a much better place now. But my CIO is fabulous in many ways, and he keeps reminding me that there's a spectrum between security and convenience. And where are we willing to be on that spectrum? If we want to be super secure, that comes with some inconveniences, I guess. Or if we want things to be super convenient, then that lessens our security somewhat. As you can imagine, right after an event happens and we're trying to recover, we are much more toward that lock everything down. We want to be super secure, never let this happen to us again. But as we move out, as time occurs, I think we found ourselves realizing we can't lock everything down. We still have to operate. We still have to take care of our students and take care of business. So it's been a growing opportunity for us to try to find out where we're comfortable on that spectrum between security and convenience.
So after experiencing an event, how have you and your team changed the way that you prepare for what some would call the inevitable? A lot of folks are now saying that it's not when, but if you experience an attack. How has that changed how you prepare for such a thing?
So if you had asked me that question before the event, I would say, of course we're prepared. We have training. We tell people not to click on links in emails, and we're very secure. We protect our passwords. My answer would have been very different. Since the event, I recognized that the training we had was good, but maybe not quite as meaningful as it should have been. It is now very applicable and very practical to us because we have been in that situation. So I would be remiss if I did not say redundancy. But that's not just an ITS responsibility. So yes, I lost sleep in the early days thinking, why did we not back up differently or back up in a different way? Or if only, we could go back and do some things a little differently. But I say that to say that it's not just about the redundant systems, but it's also the practice of being redundant, of the things that are important we don't just have saved in one place. For example, for our faculty, as you update courses in whatever your LMS is, for us at the time it was Blackboard, now it's Brightspace, but as you make all these updates and create these wonderful videos, content, tutorials, whatever, don't just keep them in the LMS or on your hard drive at work. Take advantage of shared drives. Now, Central Piedmont, we've had shared drives, network drives, cloud drives for a very long time. Were we using them? Probably not as much as we are now. So maybe that's one takeaway, that we ensure the things we believe are really happening. So if we think people are using those network drives, maybe we check to make sure that we are saving things to shared drives, cloud drives, and we have a little bit of redundancy, not just with our systems, but with our practice. Another thing that is very important is the way that our training is being delivered. You know, we have growing pains. You would think an institution that has been through an event like this would, you know, really be on our toes. And we are doing great things about trying to resist some of the phishing attempts that come in through email and trying to do our best with our technology practices. So that's sort of one end of it. But one end that I think we had not anticipated is not just policy procedure, but the way that on the front end we share information. I'll give you an example. So my CIO has me terrified to open a link in an email. I mean, to the point where sometimes I message him directly, hey, Rick, is this real? Do I really open this? But in all seriousness, I think some of the training needs to be for us, not just in what we open, but in what we send and what we share. So should we be sharing documents from a network printer that allows us to email people directly? Should we really be doing that? Because sometimes that comes across very generic. Would a better practice be email it to yourself, add some context that makes it seem legitimate before sharing? Because as a college, I think there are several times that we just assume, oh, they'll know that's real, you know, that's for me. But because we're in a heightened sense of attacks and people trying to make bad things happen, I think both our proactive approach to how we manage our day-to-day business and not just how we receive and react to that is important. I also think a valuable lesson in this process for us has been you have to be willing to accept help. That when disasters occur, you know, there are agencies that come in to help, and we are so very thankful for all the help we receive from our system office, from our sister colleges, from external agencies. But you have to be willing to ask for help, accept help, and it's very humbling. So we are very grateful for all of the people and the entities that stepped in to help us. But every attack is different. I don't think we can anticipate what our attack, and Julie, I like the way you say, you know, it's not if you're attacked, but when you're attacked in some way, because everyone's attack might be a little different. So we like to have a plan A and think, yes, we have redundant systems, we're good. Or yes, we've provided training, we're good. Because you don't know exactly what your attack might look like, you really need to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. I don't think we can prepare for everything that's happened, but I do believe that when it happens again, we'll be better prepared. We'll have systems in place that stop it sooner. And I think eventually we'll be in an environment as a system, but definitely at Central Piedmont as a college, where when it comes, when we're attacked next, we'll be ready for them.
And just finally, do you have any words of encouragement for our academic leaders who are beginning the process of thinking about business continuity?
So be patient, be kind to yourself, and be kind with your faculty, because your faculty really do own content and delivery. And when we think about when COVID struck and we converted everything to online very quickly, you know, we really were relying on our faculty to step in and be able to move content from in-person to online and really shape that content. I think this is a similar lift. When we talk to our faculty about we need to make sure that our instruction is protected and backed up and redundant, that's not just to save everything one place. So I think it's a be patient, steps, encourage your faculty as they're creating new content, for example, to save that content in a secondary location, probably on a shared drive, a cloud drive, a network drive, whatever that is, but maybe in baby steps. So moving forward as we create new things, maybe that's what you make redundant and back up. But I think one of the biggest things is you need to be able to trust your people and have the relationship of trust, not just between you and your faculty, but between instruction and ITS, between instruction and, you know, your business office and your student affairs office. I think that across the college, we all need to work on relationships, because we could find ourselves in trouble if we say that this is a responsibility of just one area, right? We like to think ITS does keep us secure. Yes, that is true, but it's not just their responsibility, because I think that's probably the big lesson here, because it's not something that ITS did that opened a door. You know, it was a bad actor somewhere that came into our systems, but we all have a responsibility to help man the fort, so to speak, that it is all of our responsibilities. So we don't want to assume that other areas are responsible for their piece and I'm only responsible for instruction. So as we are preparing and building our plans, make them collaborative. So be working with the other teams on your campus with your business continuity plans. And if you have a department that handles those for you, even better. But work with your experts in those areas. Take it in baby steps. You know, take your low-hanging fruit first and ease your way into a more comprehensive plan. But be kind to yourself. It's a lot of work, but it is definitely necessary.
Okay, so what is your role and how can you increase your security posture? It's not just on IT. Implement a maintenance and patch schedule. That's not just for Call-E. That's for all your critical infrastructure. Update essential systems, including your desktops, laptops, your browsers, your applications. Remove access to on-site shared network drives, USBs, and external drives. Implement least privilege, which means if you don't need to know, you don't need to know. Back up your important data. Don't depend on someone else to do that for you. It's your data. Back up your stuff. Provide security training, which I'm sure Susan already does with know before and phishing emails, and create a business continuity plan, which I think Susan said you guys have already started or are looking at. All I've got left is Q&A, Susan. I'll let you do yours.
Thank you. I know we're running short on time, so I will try to make this quick. All right, you guys will remember that on kickoff, I made an announcement that we were going to discontinue the use of USB and external drives on October 2nd. So I wanted to take just a few minutes to answer some of the questions that some of you've had, maybe go into detail just a little bit more as to why we're doing that and why we're torturing you and making your life miserable. But as I said, you won't be able to use them anymore in most places on campus on October 2nd. Now, this is in response to scans that we had by the North Carolina National Guard last year, also recommendations that come from the system office. You just heard Lisa say it. It's happening at other schools as well. We're actually one of the last to put this ban into effect, and I have been hesitant, I will admit that. All of those schools that you saw that were attacked by ransomware, that's one of the first things they did. They took away the ability to use any USBs or external drives on campus. As I was putting some things together last week, I came across an article from Sophos. This is a top security software company. And they discussed why it's beneficial to discontinue the use of USBs and external drives. They did an analysis of lost USB keys. They actually purchased 100 at a public transport utilities auction, and they found that 66% of those were infected with malware. Many of those had personal files and work-related files on them. Not a single one was encrypted, requiring a password. Did you guys know you can do that with your USB and your external drive? You can actually set it up so that it needs a password. I don't do that. I've never done that. So any of the files that were on those USBs can be accessed and used. So it isn't just malware and ransomware that we need to worry about, and you hear me yell about that all the time. It's also data protection. So I took this picture at my desk, and my desk looks really dirty too, and I'm sorry. But as I was putting this little PowerPoint together, I just grabbed the USB drives that I had on my desk and threw them down and took a picture of them. And right now I have 3 or 4 that are laying there. I have no idea what's on them really. I don't know, maybe some PowerPoints, maybe some documents. I do know they're not encrypted, so if anybody were to come in or gain access to my office, they could pick one up. I'd probably never know that it was gone. So that's a data risk. That's a risk that we need to manage. I'm guessing that a lot of you are in the same boat. I remember the days when I would find a USB on campus and I would think it belonged to a student. So what would I do? I would plug it in to see if I could figure out who it belonged to. We don't want to do that now. Some of these bad actors are actually planting these USB keys, hoping that you will plug them in. Because one thing that happens with a USB, if it's got a program on there, it's executable, it will run automatically. All it requires is for you to give it physical access to the network. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna move our files to OneDrive. I know that you're excited about that. I bet you've done that already. One thing that makes it safer, it's not foolproof. We don't know for sure after a ransomware event if our OneDrives will be safe. We hope they will be. But it does require you to authenticate to access your files, so that's a lot safer. This protects you, this protects the college, and you can have your files multiple places just like you can with a USB. So one of the questions that a lot of people are asking me is, well, how much space do I have on OneDrive? Is it enough for me? Everyone has 1 terabyte by default. We can increase that if we need to. We hope we don't have to. For most of us, 1 terabyte is going to be more than you're ever going to need. But there are some instances, like in marketing, with all the photos they have. The TV studio has come up. We've had to talk about that. You can imagine the videos that they store are very large. So there are going to be some exceptions. We're going to have to work through some things individually. And I'm betting some of you faculty members, you might have videos or maybe some things you've done for class that you know that they're very large and they may not be able to fit on OneDrive. We will work with you. We will talk you through this, make it as easy as we can. Also, we have our texts that are coming around. They've been working on this the last few weeks and they'll continue until October to make sure that OneDrive is set up properly and it's backing up on your computer. Now, you will be responsible for watching it every now and then. If it gets signed out or it's not working, you'll start getting messages because mine will start popping up and telling me, you know, your password's wrong, you know, you got to re-authenticate. So you do have to pay attention to it and make sure that it's working. Students, what will this mean for them? The good news is in our labs, we have a software called Deep Freeze, which many of you are familiar with, that's loaded on there. It doesn't allow for anything to copy to the hard drive. You will be able to use an USB or an external drive in the labs. So you as a faculty member, if you bring something from home and you're like, you know, crap, I can't plug it in my office computer, run to a lab, go to the library, you'll be able to plug it in, print it, email it to yourself, whatever you need to do. The issue with your office is you guys know that you're able to save things in your office. You're able to write to your drives. You have access to that. So that's why we can't allow it on your office machines. But in the labs, on the Aquas boards, the clear touch panels that have the USBs, you'll be able to use them there too. So those are perfectly safe. And I know I ran through that because I know that we're all trying to get to lunch. But if you have specific questions, I probably won't answer any specific ones right here in front of everybody, but I bet all of you, maybe you're thinking, well, what about this? And what about this file? Or how's this gonna work for me? Call me, call Greg, call one of the computer techs. We would love to help you through this and make it as easy as possible. Like I said, we're not the first to do this. And some of the feedback that I've gotten from other colleges across the state, of course, it's very painful at first. It's like those 14-character passwords. That's no big deal now, right? See? But yeah, I know that it's painful, but we will be able to get through it and it'll be no problem in a few months. It'll be like it never happened. So thank you guys today. Thank you to Lisa for being here. We really appreciate her. I feel so much better knowing that she's on our campus and that she's a text or a call away if anything should happen. And just like she said, guys, if you click things, if you think you've done something, we will not be mad at you. We will celebrate you. We will tell everybody how wonderful you are. Call us if you think you did something because we want to know early. So thanks, guys. I think it's time for lunch.